Okay, welcome to Atheist Edge on a Friday night because we're awesome. I am Chris here with TJ and with Richard Madsen. Richard, if you didn't see our previous broadcast with him, he is a Christian, but not the kind that you would expect. And we wanted to have him on again to talk a little bit more about that, possibly among some other topics. We also have Jim in the background behind the curtain who will be looking at the chat. So if you have any questions for Richard or for us, feel free to drop them in there, and Jim may be in to bring them up later. So to get started, Richard, welcome. Thanks for joining us again. Glad to have you on. For people who didn't see our previous chat, why don't you give us a quick background on yourself, kind of your journey to faith, and where you're at right now.
Peace and respect to you all. And I'd like to additionally say I love you all very much, and I know someday we're all going to be friends, and I really look forward to that.
We're already friends, man.
Well, thank you, but I'm not friends yet with everyone, and I'm speaking to everyone. Fair enough. Okay, so I'm not very well educated. I'm a construction worker. I don't have any theological background. I don't have any training in biblical studies. I don't have any training in Old or New Testament or any religion on this planet, in fact. I wasn't interested in any of these things from the time I was 12 years old until I was 42, because a Catholic priest tried to rape me, and I found that objectionable. And I went away from religions completely until I was 42. But at age 42, and on a whim, pretty much, I picked up a Bible and read the only story that I could recall being mentioned from my childhood, and that was David and Goliath. And in reading David and Goliath, the vision in my head of the story took over. And when it took over, it exposed to me things that are provably false or true, that is falsifiable. So I started investigating further, and today I call myself a Christian because I'm speaking in a Christian nation. I can't say that I'm a Christian. That's not completely accurate. I do believe that all of the ancient texts are referring to the same thing in socially acceptable ways that people would understand from their point of view, and that, in fact, all of them are saying the same thing, which is why you get some offshoots like Zeitgeist making an attempt to hook those things together. We do see there are some similarities, but those similarities are even recognized from within the dogmatic views from those respective viewpoints. But I see that they're actually all exactly the same. And my intent is to help people understand these things, even if they think it's just academic, even if they think it's wrong, even if they think it's a joke. I don't really care. So long as I could present these things to them, and should they happen, it would ease them with transition into our future.
Okay, well, first of all, I should apologize for introducing you as a Christian.
I'm not as such fine.
Yeah, we've only ever talked about Bible stuff, so
yeah,
I got that vibe from it. So, so you think that there's a bunch of ancient texts, and they're all pointing, and they're all in their own way pointing to something larger. What is that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish it. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, what is this thing that you think that everything's pointing to, if not the specific God enunciated in the text?
Well, I would give an example before to reinforce my position before I actually answer your question, and that is, if you understand that the Native American, the Aboriginal American, in what we call Indians, which is disrespectful, but anyway. Those people were on this landmass, according to their stories, for some 15,000 years or something, living in these tribal conditions, and each tribe having their own religion. You're aware of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And are you additionally aware of when the Spaniards and when the white man came to this continent?
Am I aware of when in time?
When, approximately? It doesn't have to be exact.
16th, 17th century, starting
right
there.
Okay, so they had their religious expressions for thousands of years before white folks got here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's although they were forced to act as if they had adopted Christianity, they did not. They took their religion underground, and now it's just starting to emerge again, and they have the freedoms to really express themselves in a traditional way. And white people are just starting, and others are just starting to see this exposed to these other cultures. So the natives are just starting to like allow some of it out there. So now we have what we call from the Zuni tribe, we have what they call kachinas, and they sell them to tourists as dolls. But the kachinas are a very, very serious thing. And there's one particular kachina that I would use as an example. And the kachina, the red star kachina, has this exact pattern on his chest, painted in black and white. 24 around the outside, 4 like this, medium-sized circles or spheres, and then one large one in the middle. And then his helmet does a better job of representing the same thing because it's three-dimensional. It's a mask, and it's a hard clay mask. And it has the really small globes. If there were all 24 of them on the mask, it would be just covered in them. But there's 4, 2 where you can see through and 2 where you couldn't, but they still have ports as if you could see through them. If you had 4 eyes and a diamond pattern, I suppose you could see through them. And then 4 large ones evenly spaced around the helmet, each of them having 6 feathers each. And then the main helmet itself. And all of these are brilliant red and follow this exact same pattern. But where I get this from, which a native friend of mine here in New Mexico actually pointed out when I was painting, I was doing a rendering of this one time. He walks by and he goes, "Oh, red star kachina." So I looked it up and he's right. But this is chapter 4 of the book of Revelation. So I would give that as a small example. And the question you actually asked me was? You're muted, sir. I cannot hear you.
Thank you. So my original question was, if all these ancient texts are all pointing to the same thing,
yes.
What exactly is it that you think that they're actually pointing to?
Oh, yes, that's right. Thank you. So what I believe they're pointing to is that at some point in the past, there was an earth like this, and those people, human beings, of that earth actually became space travelers, and we are a result of them. And that this is what the group of craft that we will see looks like. This in Christianity would be called heaven.
Okay. So there's probably a lot of directions we can go from that. So not to keep things Bible focused, but I think probably we're most
people are most familiar. Yes.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
We're in a Christian society. We grew up Christian. You brought up Revelation 4.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think that Revelation 4? What do you see in there that that symbol corresponds to?
I don't understand. This is what it describes. I just drew an overhead view of it. Actually, an underbelly view.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't off familiar with Revelation 4 off the top of our heads, like what does Revelation 4 state that?
Well,
describes?
When we translated the text, they labeled each different section, or what they thought were different sections. So chapter 4 of the book of Revelation is called, quote unquote, the throne room of heaven. Now, that's not part of the original text, but that's what it's been dubbed since King James. So, and possibly before that in some places. But anyway, okay, so it speaks of the one who sits on God's throne, the 4 beasts around God's throne, which have 6 wings each, and then the 24 elders surrounding them. So that's just basically this.
Okay, do you think that is a coincidence, or do you think that is intentional? Because I would imagine that, I've seen, very broadly speaking, I've seen, symbols, icons, something in the center, 4 things surrounding it on a variety of things. I've seen it in the Purina logo for the people who have dogs. So I guess I'm not sure where you figure out that that is a intentional reference to an actual craft or UFO like that, or just it just happens to be that this same symbology is used in multiple places.
I actually see that as being two questions, if it's okay.
Sure.
First of all, the reason that I think that this is what it's indicating is because it's universal. You can find this in Japanese art. You can find it in Hinduism. You can find it in Native American cultures. You can find it in Christianity. You can find it everywhere. Now these people were not sharing ideas and adopting things from other people's religions. But there are some who contacted each other, knew each other, traded, whatever, and have also the same. But then I can't use them as an example now, can I? So the reason I think it has value is because of universality. As far as what it's actually describing, why I believe what it's describing is actually what we would, in our present mindset, would call a spaceship, or actually 29 total spaceships. The reason that I think that that's what's being described is because there is a descriptor within the text which eliminates every other possibility. And I've walked people through this before. So if you think of, and I won't ask you to labor it, but if you think of everything that you know of that has the ability of flight, and then you eliminate what cannot have eyes within, cannot have understandable speech, cannot have, let's see, it was eyes within, speaking day and night. And is not from this planet. You end up with a spaceship. That's just what you end up with. I've blindsided people and asked them to run through that before, and they always say the same thing.
It sounds like you're trying to. Sounds like you're trying to memorize things and then necessarily, like, say and like go like, okay, this is what I thought, and this is the thing that I learned, and this is what I remember, and I'm gonna say this from memory. It sounds like you're just trying to say it from memory.
Well, perhaps you'd like to look it up and double check me.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it just sounds like you're trying to say it from memory.
You're welcome to, or I'd read it. It's kind of boring to read it, but I'd
Are
read
you
it to
saying
you.
these things from memory?
What's that?
Are you saying these things from memory?
Well, we were in conversation. I mean, I could read it to you if you like.
If you are, though, why is not saying these things from memories? Why is it? So why is it? What makes it true? Is it true?
Well, it's not true yet.
Okay, so you're not like admitting that these things are true. You're saying these things could be true.
Well, I'm convinced of it, but that doesn't mean you have to be.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Like, we get that. Like, that you're convinced of it. But
Right.
What's saying that these things are true objectively?
Okay. Spherical, magenta in color, 29 count. The 4 medium-sized ones have 6 wings each. I mean, you just find it all over the planet. I mean, it's everywhere in cultures that never met each other.
Science doesn't understand these things. You're talking about these things in colors. Like, we don't understand this. Can you? I don't know.
I did a painting. It's on my shirt. I did a rendering on my shirt too.
All right.
Real quick, Jim, do you have a question from the chat?
Oh, shoot. Okay. Let me get back to that screen real quick. Yes, I do. I'm going to try to reword this because it's written kind of confrontationally. So I'm going to tone it down. But
YouTube comments? Really?
I know, right? In IFB, Jesus just basically wants to know, do you have any hard evidence to support your claims?
Well, yes, I have hard
Richard.
evidence to support a lot of my claims. This is not one of them.
Oh, also, I really like that fan art. We haven't touched on it yet, but I love the fan art in the background.
Thank you.
Thank you.
TJ, I would have drawn you in there, but I didn't know you were going to be here, buddy. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
And
We'll
I would never guess you grew a beard.
That'll be
either,
the sequel.
It's all good.
Yes. So hard evidence to support your claims? And are these indeed truth claims, or are you speculating? And I'll sign off here.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for reading them. So some of it I'm extrapolating. Some of it I am not. Okay. Of course, you need a basis for extrapolation. So some of the things I can give scientific evidence to the existence of them, but some of the things I'm talking about the future, things that haven't happened yet. And of course, I don't have any evidence to them. For instance, I don't have any evidence that part of the prophecy is Jupiter gets lit on fire. I don't have evidence of that. Jupiter's not on fire. Can I say scientifically that Jupiter is flammable? Definitely. Yeah, we can totally say that.
Okay, so let's set aside the future for now, since I think probably our audience is more interested in, like the chat said, what's the hard evidence? Like what can we say about the what's confirmable here and now that would be used to support what you're saying?
A lot of the conversations that I've been in, people naturally assume, and it's natural for a person to assume this, that what I've done is I've went and found interesting things in nature and then directly associated them to some spiritual text. That's simply not the case. But actually what happens is I read some part of the text and I have a mindset about it, and I'll give an example right after this. I have a mindset about it. I go look for the thing, and the thing is actually there. I'll give a for instance. Dagon was an ancient god.
Dagon.
Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. My dad used to say, "Daggone it, boy." But anyway, Dagon was an ancient god, which later became was a fish god, which later became Poseidon. And now these were constellations commonly referred to. That's only one constellation. It wraps around the North Star, and there's 3 stars within that make up the head and hands of Dagon, and those 3 stars form a very, very close to perfect triangle right there beside the North Star. So I understand that the Ark of the Covenant is not some meaningless statue. It's not a secret energy source. It doesn't vibrate magic waves or anything that people say.
No Nazis or anything like that.
Well, yeah, no Nazis chasing Harrison Ford around. No. But instead, what it is it's a verbal representation of the side view of this. That is heaven's arrival. You'd have the seraphim with the wings pointing in, with the mercy seat above, with the chest underneath of it, the main body of it there. It's just a side view of chapter 4 of the book of Revelation. That is heaven arriving.
Sorry, you mean the real quick? You're saying that that triangle of stars is representative of
no,
the
Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant is just it's just a side shot of this. That's all it is.
So it's not an actual.
It's not a real thing that's here. I mean, it might even be a physical thing that's here, but that's irrelevant. It would be a statue of something more important.
So you think so that these stories in the Bible about the Ark of the Covenant where they're
talking about heaven's arrival.
Heaven's arrival. So
not a history lesson.
So when there are specific instructions in the Bible for handling the Ark of the Covenant and how it's to be carried, how it's to be constructed, and someone even
it's not how it's to be constructed, it's how it is constructed. That's a different thing.
Okay. And it's so specific to the point that someone touches it and is zapped to death.
That's right. Well, if something came from outer space and you touched it, what would happen to you?
If it landed on me, I'd probably die.
No, if you just touched it, not it landed on you. You put out your hand and you touched it.
Yeah.
Well, it depends.
Do you know how radioactive things from outer space are?
We have meteorites.
Never mean like heat, not all these other problems. Anyway, it's a warning not to touch it. And a lot of language is very figurative, and it has to be taken in context. It would be a deep discussion just to talk about that part of the text, to be honest with you. But if you don't mind me going back, so the Ark of the Covenant is a representation of heaven arriving to the earth. And then Dagon, the Philistine, quote unquote, not a friend of God, the Philistine Dagon, the Ark of the Covenant is in the house of Dagon. Dagon falls off of his head and hands. This is physically impossible, by the way. And he cuts off his head and hands on a threshold. That means a piece of wood that keeps straw in your house. That's what threshold means. But understanding that it was talking about astronomy, that what that means is that when heaven is close to arriving to the earth, that those 3 stars would be blocked from our view. That's what it would mean. So since 2012, and I've told several people, I have witnesses that I said this, so that since 2012, I've been looking at nasa.gov for something that would block out those 3 stars, and I didn't find it until 2017, and it's Comet Charlie 2017 K2 Pan stars. Now that's on a trajectory that's going to pierce our solar system, loop underneath the sun, and supposedly head back out of our solar system. And it's the largest, brightest at that distance comet we've ever seen. It's less than 12 miles across, but it's got a coma that is sublimation, the tail of it, coming off of it, that would rival the size of Jupiter. So it's sublimating at the same distance as approximately, let's see, which was Jupiter. What's the next planet there? Jupiter,
Saturn.
Saturn, Uranus. It's about as far away as Uranus right now.
Are you a flat earther?
No, I don't even know why you asked that.
Ridiculous, right? That's ridiculous. You think that's
flat
ridiculous.
Earth, dude? We've never seen a stripe across the moon. The Earth's not flat.
Okay, so we all agree on something. That's good.
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
I mean,
yeah. I know I'm really weird, but I'm not insane.
We're all a little weird.
Well, I hear this stuff coming out of my mouth, and I remember being an anti-theist. And if I was an anti-theist still, and I heard someone saying this, I said, "Dude, you're out of your ever-loving mind. You're full of crap." That's what I would say to me. I really would.
So let me ask you this: since you brought up context, and I think we all agree that context is important. We're trying to interpret these old documents and trying to figure out what's historical, what's mythological, what's just so story.
I would say that's an impossible task.
It's very hard, but you got to do your level best as a person. So if we're looking at the context of we can say the Ark of the Covenant story, or we could say the Book of Revelation. The Christians or Jews who were writing these texts, or are currently using it as their guide for life, they would say that when Revelation describes a throne room, it's an actual throne room. Or when they're talking about the Ark of the Covenant and rules for handling it, they're talking about an actual physical object that existed at one point, and
they believe so. Yes,
it may now be hidden in a warehouse somewhere.
But then, if you ask a Buddhist if Buddha was a real person, they'll say yes.
Siddhartha was.
So what does that matter?
They don't claim that he was a supernatural being, though.
Sure, they do. In certain ways, they do claim.
Some do. Some do. Yeah. Some do, but most don't.
Okay, I'm claiming that none of this is supernatural. It should be easier.
So I guess my question is, if context is key, what is it in the context of these verses that makes you think that they are related to astronomy and not just take the plain reading of the text?
Well, first of all, you just made about 5 different Christian assumptions.
Probably.
Within dogmatic Christian view that I assign no value to at all. And that I don't mean that as an insult, except I'd like to point out to Christians that their view doesn't make any sense within the text. So, I mean, I can disprove any Christian sect using the Bible, like no problem. It's pretty easy, actually. Any Christian sect using the Bible, yes.
Any Christian sect, even mainstream.
Any any Christian CHR. Come on, any Christian text, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
real quick, before we get too much into that,
I get confirmation through congruity throughout the text. It's congruent throughout the text. It doesn't argue with itself within the view that I've adopted. It works all over this is just a scientific method. Look, its applicability, its falsifiability, its predictive power, period. Just like anything else we want to test.
Okay, real quick. Jim, there's more on the live chat.
Yeah, we're piling up, gentlemen. So let me just throw two out at you. And if you want to field one or both
Somebody
of them.
remember both of them, because I won't be able to do that.
Well, they're from the same person, I think. Bruce Cook. He says, if you had been born, I guess it's for Richard, if you had been born before aircraft, spacecraft, would you be imagining a circular shaped flying chariot? Second one is, do you put as much, I'm paraphrasing here, do you put as much stock into the Quran as you do maybe Bible revelation? And do you believe that there's any symbolism or anything to like the moon splitting in half or a flying horse or any of that?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to answer the second one first, because I can't remember what the first one was, because my brain's like that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's see.
Want me to answer one at a time?
Yeah.
Please?
If you had been born
Oh yeah.
before
Okay.
aircraft,
Yes, probably.
spacecraft.
I wouldn't have words. I wouldn't have a concept. Yeah. I agree with them 100%. And as for the moon splitting in half, yes. When I say that all ancient religious texts are valid, I'm not joking. I really believe that. For instance, if we have the sun in the middle of our solar system, and we have Jupiter lit on fire, which I just said like 5 minutes ago, and the Earth were in between, and the moon were in its normal orbit around the Earth, then yeah, you could have a moon that looks like it's split in half, like no problem at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about what you were just saying before I went to the live chat. You're saying that your interpretation of these is valid because it is it's congruent. It's you said falsifiable.
Well, not the prophecy stuff, but the past stuff is falsifiable.
Okay,
for obvious reasons.
So for books that make contradictory claims, like just
there are no contradictory claims in any ancient religion. You're talking about dogma now.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you.
You are kidding.
No, I'm not a troll, bro. Okay, I'm not joking.
We may need to clarify terms then, just to make sure we're on the same page, because I mean, just very basically, Christianity, Jesus is the Son of God. He's a divine person. Islam, Jesus is just a prophet. He's just a dude.
Until he returns, you're right.
So
once he returns, they look at it differently, and you'd become wrong.
Okay. And Christianity claims that their way to God is the only way to God. Other religions,
there is only one way to God. It's through truth. That's why he's called the truth, the way, and the light. If you cannot succeed by following darkness and falseness and lies, of course. So everyone that follows the truth, the way, and the light is by, for instance, do you worship Mr. Boson? How about Mr. Higgs? No. Are you subject to it anyway? Yes, you absolutely are. So you're a follower of Higgs boson, whether you like it or not.
Well, there's a difference, of course, between being being subject to the effects of something and worshiping.
Okay, it's not the best example, I'll admit that, but I think you get the idea.
I'm trying to understand the idea. Just to
an
sure.
example.
Well, for instance, I don't have to believe in gravity. I'm still subject to gravity.
Well, it's true, but we have ways of showing that gravity is a thing.
Right.
And we're
that's
trying
changing the topic, but
I know I'm trying to using this as an analogy. I'm trying to show because I mean we're on a show called Atheist Edge because we don't really have a reason.
Well, first, let me just reroute it completely.
Okay.
Do you think that in your life, in your reality, there are truths according to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now you're alive right now, which makes me think you do know things that are real. Because if you didn't, you'd be dead. Okay. I mean, You're past 12 years old. Mom's not taking care of you. You'd be dead if you had nothing but lies. So you must have some truths in your life that you're following that cause you to be able to survive. Okay. So if you had nothing but lies, do you think you'd be near where you are right now? See, truths result in success, lies result in failure. It's just as simple as
live
that.
or not live?
What?
Do truths and falsehoods make you live or not live?
Absolutely, yes.
Is that the?
I'll give you an example of a truth. You cannot consume pure mercury by the pound. You can't do that. You'll die.
Well, I think we
okay,
all.
That's a truth then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone in this group is like a postmodernist. There is no truth kind of person.
Well, I'm sure some of the audience is, but
possibly. I know there's people out there, but what we're trying to figure out is, okay, we're trying to determine we're trying to determine the truth about supernatural entities. God.
I don't think there's supernatural entities.
Okay, interesting.
So everything that you believe is natural.
Everything I'm talking about is 100% natural, no magic.
Okay.
I mean, have you heard me mention magic?
Well, you're talking about. Okay, so do you think that everything in every ancient text is true?
Yes, within a certain mindset.
What mindset is that?
The one that makes them all the same thing.
But they're really not all the same thing, though. They
are within a certain mindset.
So if you have the mindset that they're all the same thing, then they become
it takes a lot of evidence for anyone to get to any decision or any point of view. It takes a lot of evidence to get there. And now I'm not saying that I could present that in 30 seconds or less.
You can't present it. Why should we believe you?
What's that?
If you can't present it, why should we believe you?
Is this the straw man show? I didn't say I couldn't present it.
No. I'm just asking.
I said I couldn't do it in 30 seconds.
You're saying I can't present that evidence. And
in 30 seconds, TJ.
Why should we believe you?
I said in 30 seconds. I mean, how'd you miss the second half of the sentence, boss?
Okay.
I never said I couldn't present it. I said I couldn't present it in 30 seconds.
That's what we're asking. That's what we're asking is for you to present it.
Well, you don't have to accept that for 4 continuous years I was looking for an object to block out those 3 stars as evidence. You don't have to accept that. It is. You don't have to accept that I didn't know anything about the planet Jupiter, yet I saw in the text that it's flammable. I go look it up. It is. You don't have to accept that. It's fine, but it is evidence because I just didn't know these things.
Okay, Jim, we have more from the chat.
Yeah, 2 of them. I'm just going to shotgun blast you in the face again. But I'll ask them one at a time this time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bruce Cook again asks, I guess this is in line with if you take scripture, I don't know, literally, why did Yahweh inspire the writer of Job to say that the earth is basically made of clay, shaped like a disc, it's circular and it's flat, and it's under a hard dome? So,
well, first of all, there's no such thing as a 2-dimensional circle. That's a concept. In order for something to be, it has to have depth. So I think it's ridiculous to take the circle of the earth meaning a coin. I think that's goofy. I think that there's no cause within context to take it that way.
Okay.
And yes, there's clay here.
Fair enough. A Crazy Horse asks, so do you believe and agree with Numbers 5:11? And I took the liberty of looking it up, and it's basically a prescription for how to test an unfaithful wife. The Lord
the abortion one?
No, the Lord says to Moses, here's how you test. If there were no witnesses that your wife was unfaithful, you take her before the priest. It involves clay jars, some barley, and some incense, and you do grain offering and some anointing, and then you can find out using this hocus pocus way.
Yeah, I don't believe in hocus pocus. I really don't. I would have to review that particular part of the text, and I know that sounds like a cop-out. It's not. But I would have to review that part of the text to get it back in context in my brain. I'm so used to just speaking about these huge overviews. I apologize. But to justify myself, I've only read the Bible once, so I'm in no way an expert.
Okay, and also Jason Ellis is in the chat now, so get ready for a lot of questions. But I'm signing off for now.
Okay, so we have stuff to look forward to. You want to talk about the Fram rupees?
Well, when I did look it up, which I only looked it up one time, I never bothered to look it up again. I saw the mountain ranges in the shapes described as the accoutrement, the weapons of the stuff David was carrying. I found it super easy. If somebody else doesn't find it super easy, I apologize. But it's just the 5 biggest mountain ranges on the planet, and they're on the southern hemisphere. And Fram Rupees is right there in the closed mouth U-shaped one. I think they're real easy to spot. Now, maybe other people think that's pareidolia, whatever, what have you. My imagination, I'm seeing ducks in clouds or whatever. That's fine, except that it continues throughout the whole story. Like there's no extra stuff that isn't there in reality. Although all parts of reality are not included in the text, that would make it a library, not a two-page story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I find all of it pretty darn easy. But I find it in several religions. I would give the example of Greek mythology, where the blacksmith held captive by Zeus he's a cyclops. He's got an eye in the middle of his forehead. That's the great red eye in Jupiter. That he has. He's working in. He's got a beautiful woman. He's working in shiny newish metal, whatever, and he's got a big hammer and he's got this big furnace thing. Anyway. So all the aspects are there in every story. And, the name of the Cyclops is Angus, which means brightness. So, I mean, you can call it coincidental that the name of the 5th guy out held captive by Zeus, his name is Brightness and Jupiter is flammable. But, I mean, I don't take that as being coincidence.
I think, we're trying to figure out where he's coming from on this. So
I think it's really simple. Let me just make a statement, and people whose brain automatically do logic more than art, I think some people out there will see exactly what I'm saying. That these are not historical lessons, but these are all prophetic. They're all apocalyptic, and they're all encoded. They're cryptic. So I think that within that, if you understand that it's not a history lesson, well, the names of the places in, for instance, the Bible, those names have meanings. And then when we translated it, we said the name of the place instead of the nickname that the Jews gave it, or the Jews had for that particular place. So we kind of overdid it and kind of went too far. I understand people were trying to be serious. That's great. But they kind of overdid it. And I think unless you were Hebrew speaking, and I think this is one of the reasons why the Jewish people think they have such a leg up, is because they hear the actual words. Like the word David means boiling. It's not a name. It's a condition of hot liquids.
Okay, so this is one of the things I find interesting because we had a little bit of email back and forth, and because when we had our last discussion. You sent me some information about the planets, but you connected them to the David story, not to Greek mythology.
Yeah, but it's everywhere.
It's everywhere if you.
I said within the mindset I've adopted. I wasn't kidding. It's a very particular thing.
I understand, and I think if I could make a prophecy, I have that gift. I think when we're done tonight, I think the sticking point where we're not going to come to agreement is, like you said, you brought up pareidolia, and we could talk about Rorschach tests and people seeing things where they're maybe not intended to be seen, or maybe where there's nothing to see. And I mean, I guess from our differing perspectives, I mean, I can't tell you that there's something not there,
right?
But at the same time, I don't think that you may have the I don't think you have the evidence to show this to be a universal thing, and maybe it's not intended to be. Maybe you think it's a message that was meant for you personally. But I hope.
No, I don't think it was. I mean, I was convinced by David and Goliath. I didn't need any more to have anything beyond that. It's like icing on the cake. I really think that even if people make fun of me and laugh at me, I don't care. I think I'm supposed to present it to other people.
Okay.
Like this came after David and Goliath.
Okay. Would you mind expounding on the David and Goliath a little bit, since that's the thing that convinced you?
Yeah, sure, easily. I mean, I never got to tell you guys this story before. See, what happened was I read the story. It's got a lot of description in it. So your brain automatically goes into like a three-dimensional real world. You can picture yourself on the scene thing, you know, like you can imagine it right there in front of you, right? And I was imagining that, and then the scene took over and I couldn't control it. And by the way, I've never done hallucinogenics, and I wasn't even asleep when this happened. I was awake.
So you had an actual like straight up vision, not a dream, not a.
People would call it different things. I don't know what to call it, but you know, like if you're reading a descriptive story, you kind of have a movie camera in your head that'll play that movie. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was having one of those movies, only then the director took over and I was not in control of the movie anymore. And with that, it I'll leave out the boring details, but it transformed Saul all the way through Goliath into the planets one by one. And I didn't even know what was going on until it was done. I didn't recognize them because I'm such a bad student. I don't recognize the planets in our own solar system. But anyway, so it transformed all of them. And I said, well, this has got to be wrong. You know, that can't be what this story is. So I went to nasa.gov and I looked it up. And even though I thought we called the moon because it was the only one, which is, I know that's stupid, but that's what I thought was true. Even though I thought we called the moon for that reason, I thought other planets didn't even have moons. So I was surprised to find moons in a story. I didn't know those moons were there. I know that's really goofy, but it's true. A little embarrassing, but true. But if I apply the story to the first 5 planets, 4 major moons over Jupiter, and I apply the story of David and Goliath to those stellar bodies, what I get is the actual physical real-time things we'll see that would make the prophecy come true. It would come in that order. That is the quaking of the earth, followed by the Blood Sea miracle, followed by Wormwood, followed by the smiting of the thirds. It would happen exactly in that order.
So with the planets, because you emailed me about this, so the Jupiter in your thing is Goliath,
correct?
And the major moons are his armaments.
Yes.
And David is Mercury.
Correct.
Remember correctly, and then he has the 3 brothers that went to battle.
Right, and they stand in a line. The biggest one stands in the middle. That's Earth. Eliab.
Eliab. Saul's the sun, and the brothers that stayed home are the outer planets.
Yeah, the four outer planets. Yeah, they're kind of ignored in the story because they're not participants.
Right, but this. So where is Jesse in all this?
Where's Jesse? Jesse's David's dad.
Right, but where is he in the planetary analogy?
Jesse's not part of the planetary alignment.
He's not.
Jesse comes before the story starts.
Okay. Well,
he's not in the story.
Oh, okay.
So he just is not in the story.
Neither.
What about Mars's moons? Mars's 2 moons.
Those are not mentioned.
Those are not mentioned.
Right.
Jupiter has
67
moons, but only
4 major moons
are mentioned.
The Jovian moons, yes.
Jovian moons are mentioned. Saturn has a whole bunch of moons. Uranus. Neptune,
where's Saturn? Saturn's not in the story.
Well, Saturn was one of the brothers that stayed home.
No, sir.
Right.
The ones that stay home, yes.
Yes. So Saturn's in. Moons of Saturn are not.
Just it exists. Nothing else. No detail.
So it lines up except for all that stuff that's not in the story.
Well, none of that stuff's actually involved in the story.
Well, where's this enumerated?
Those aren't part of the interactions. It just gives a basic layout, and then it gives the chain of events. That's all it gives.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because it seems like...
Well, there's any number of things. I mean, there's literally a lot more not contained in the story than is. I mean, the whole universe, for instance.
Where are you getting the things that are not contained in the story?
I don't understand what you're saying.
You don't understand why I'm asking you where you're getting the things that are not contained in the story?
Because they're not in the story. That's why I say they're not contained in the story.
Where are you getting them from is what I'm saying.
Well, they're in outer space. They're just there.
No, I'm saying, where's the narrative that you're getting?
I tried to tell you I didn't understand the question. You didn't believe me. I really don't understand the question.
No. I'm legitimately asking because I want to know, where are you getting these things in the story? Where are they coming from in the narrative?
It's the story of David and Goliath. It starts at chapter 17 of First
Where is
Samuel
this
and goes to
enumerated then?
what?
Where is this enumerated?
Well, this is not a Bible thing.
Chris,
It's-
maybe you can translate for me. I don't get it. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so you're saying you're implying them from these things, from these stories.
Well,
These are implicit things from the story. Where are you implying them from?
Well, the reason I brought up all those other moons that aren't in the story is because this is being presented to us as, hey, this matches up perfectly, and therefore it's a sign of something, but it only matches up perfectly until you look at the places where it doesn't match up perfectly.
Yeah.
Well, I'd have to agree with you. It more doesn't match up than it does match up because there's much more matter that's not mentioned than is. I totally agree.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out what you find compelling about these seeming coincidences. Then,
Well, it's like if someone said to you, "Oh, here's a road map of your local city," and then you go, "Okay, great, it's a road map." And then they say, "Well, I want you to go to my house. You follow this road, then this road, then this road, then this road." The rest of the map's kind of irrelevant.
Really, is it like that though?
What do you mean?
Is it really like that though?
Well, I can't change physics and chemistry, but the physics and chemistry is all right there to agree with this as being plausible.
I think we got more live chat questions, Jim.
Yes, sir. Okay, let me get back over to that screen. We got a lot, so I'm going to do two again. The first one is more a just a comment, but it's long, and I did a little research on the side, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Jason Ellis, aka Ralph Ellis, he describes pareidolia. It's a combination of importance of self with the patterns you find in everything. It is purely coincidental. I'll try to paraphrase the rest. If there's 7+ billion people on the planet, a 1 in a million occurrence can happen 7 times a day. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And it's an accountable amount of natural reaction. So I took the liberty again of looking up pareidolia, which I knew what it was, but I knew there was a larger subset of it. Pareidolia and gambler's fallacy both fall under apophenia. Apophenia is the tendency to mistakenly perceive connections and meaning between unrelated things. Then I looked down at a little experiment to look at the evolution of it in humans and in other lower animals. One of the explanations put forth by evolutionary psychologists for apophenia is that let me get down to this hungry pigeon experiment was really interesting. Placing a hungry pigeon in a box, releasing a food pellet at a random time. The pigeon receives a food pellet while performing some action. And so rather than attributing the arrival of the pellet to randomness, it repeats that action and continues to do so until another pellet falls. As the pigeon increases the number of times it performs the actions, it gains the impression that it also increased the amount of times that it was rewarded. It's like a little it happens in all animals, not just higher order mammals. All right. So do you want to comment on that? And I can move on to the next one.
This helps to support my case.
Okay. So be it.
being unknowledgeable about these things, I did not find that Jupiter is flammable. I didn't know that. And see where I could squeeze it into religion. That's not what happened. So it's exactly the opposite of this, even though I get accused of it on a regular basis. People assume that I know more than I do. Sorry to disappoint.
Richard, we're not here to find differences. We're here to build bridges. So if we do end up agreeing, that's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know what I'm saying? Oh, TJ, what'd you say?
No, I was just saying, well, how did you determine that? How did you determine that Saturn isn't flammable?
I didn't say Saturn isn't flammable. I never mentioned that.
How did you come to that conclusion?
I never said Saturn isn't flammable. I never said that.
You just said, I just found out that Saturn isn't flammable. You said that. So how did you come to that conclusion?
TJ, that's not what I said. I said Jupiter is flammable. I didn't say Saturn isn't flammable.
Okay, if it is, then how did you come to that conclusion?
That brings me
NASA.gov.
Yeah, when
I don't.
Once I saw it in the story, I looked to NASA.gov. 73% liquid metallic hydrogen, 21% methane on the outside is methane or butane. Can't
Right.
on the outside. It's
That's what I'm
flammable.
trying to get at. Yes.
It's flammable
Exactly.
for
That's
real.
what I'm trying to get at. That you.
Sorry, Chris. I don't mean to hijack the conversation. Let me just I have to throw in a quick question myself, and then I'll get to this question from Crazy Horse. But Jupiter is a failed star. If it were any, cosmologists, estimate that if it were pretty much any bigger, it would have started right. When Shoemaker leaving 9 crashed into it, it was split apart and crashed into it. Would that not have blown up Jupiter? If it
Apparently
were completely,
not, because it's still not lit.
Yeah, but I mean that caused huge explosions. Why didn't it self-ignite?
I don't know. I'd look to NASA to answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, if there are any astronomy buffs in the chat, feel free to.
I don't know that much about which mission was that.
No, it wasn't a mission. It was a
junk
asteroid or a comet. Shoemaker leaving 9. It broke apart.
A comet.
Yeah, and it caused huge.
Unlikely to ignite anything if it's dirt and ice.
We saw the huge explosions in the upper layers of the atmosphere as it entered Jupiter.
So you mean flames came off of it, but then nothing caught?
Well, can't be flames in space, but I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Let me just move on to Crazy Horse, and I'll sign out again. Crazy Horse says, this is interesting. So, Thomas Jefferson cut out all the hocus pocus magical shit in the Bible. Would you consider doing the same thing? And what about all the references to magic in the Bible? Would you just discount them offhand?
There is no magic described in the Bible. There's only reality described in the Bible. But it does take a particular point of view to see that. For instance, water into wine is not a magic trick. It's just taking something that's necessary, but bland, and turning it into something luxurious, but flavorful. That's what it's actually about. It's all about. That's the same reason that Christ has argumentation with the authorities in religion, is because he turned water into wine. He didn't see it the same way they did, so he had argument.
So do you think Jesus was a real dude that actually did stuff, or do you think he's
on
another
which
one
planet?
On Earth
on this Earth?
Yeah, on turn of the millennium.
No. I believe the Bible is, and all spiritual texts are only describing the end of the planet, except for a very, very brief few sentences at the beginning. So what we're getting in spiritual text is a description of what we will see, which was what they saw. So which is why it's all written past tense. Even the prophecy is written past tense.
Okay, so you don't think there are any real people described in the Bible?
Are there any real people described?
Yeah,
well, I believe it's
Apostle Paul, Moses, Pontius Pilate.
I think those are real people, but I think they happen at the end of the earth, not 2,000 years ago. I mean, if you're agnostic or atheistic, obviously you do not profess Christ, right? So if you do not profess Christ, then the whole crucifixion thing didn't work for you. So either God doesn't exist or God doesn't know the future. If he had it happen 2,000 years ago, I'd say God was a fool if he did it then.
Well, I mean, I don't think that Jesus rose from the dead or anything, but we have evidence that, for example, Pontius Pilate was a real person, and that Herod.
Well, there's nothing. I mean, if I compare you to a tall willowy tree, that doesn't make you a tall willowy tree. Although I certainly could use that as a reference to describe you. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using the natural surroundings to teach a lesson. And that's all that they did. Yes, some of those are real people that have been on this planet included in the story, because it makes for a good example. It makes for a way to explain the story. But that doesn't mean those people did those things. It just doesn't mean that. Historically, we know they didn't.
Okay. So, interesting question for you. Since you don't appear to subscribe to any traditional religion that we're familiar with, but you seem like a pretty chill dude.
Thanks.
Nice guy.
You can ask me anything. I don't care.
That's cool. Where do you get your views on morality from? How do you decide how to treat people?
Well, first of all, I think there's great value in what we ourselves decide about morality. That is, so what most would call secular morality. I think that's just fine too, and I think it improves over time. And I think try to become better at everything that we do, and I think we are. Where do I get my morality from? Well, I don't get it from the Christian dogmatic view of the Bible. I'll tell you that for sure. Those people commonly say, "My God is a horrible monster whom I love." I can't agree with that. I don't love any horrible monsters.
Well, we're glad to hear that. Not that horrible monsters don't need love too.
They might, but I don't know any to love them.
They don't make it easy on themselves. Oh man, talked about a lot of stuff in just an hour. Is there anything that from either our last conversation or from our
Jim's raising his hand.
Oh, let's go with Jim before we go with anything else.
All right. Sorry, this seems like a good place to throw in a segue anyway. I have to answer. Let me see who this was first. Sorry, I'm on like 50 different screens here. Mm-hmm. Comical Mommy, I have to defend myself a little bit. So this is just between me and Comical Mommy. She had a problem with me calling Jupiter a failed star. Over 50% of all solar systems that we have observed are binary stars systems. Okay, right. So we are kind of out of the ordinary. And so I went to Scientific American. I'm not saying this is a slam dunk, but this is for Comical Mommy. Jupiter is called a failed star because it is made of the exact same elements as the sun. It is not near massive enough to have the internal pressure and temperature necessary to cause the hydrogen to fuse to helium. Therefore, it can't be a star. It's only 0.1% of the mass of the sun. What happened in our solar system was kind of unique in the fact that our one sun scooped up a lot of the matter in the solar system early on. That's not normal. It deprived the rest of the planets to grow to gas giant enough to become a binary. It's interesting to note that over half of the I already said over half of the solar systems that we've discovered are binary, triple or higher multiple star systems. So Jupiter, if we were a binary system, guess what would have been our second sun? That's all Jupiter. I'm saying.
Jupiter, yeah.
Okay, that's all I'm saying, and I'm out again.
I mean, let's be optimistic here. Jupiter's not a failed star. It's a very successful planet. I'd put it in my top 8. Even personally,
I'm actually saying that this solar system becomes binary later, and that's part of what the prophecy is about.
Oh, so you're
prophesying. I'm saying the Bible's prophesying. I'm not prophesying.
What specifically? Where does the Bible say that we're going to be a binary star system in the future?
In the story of David and Goliath, as it represents the first 5 planets, 4 major moons.
I'm sorry, chapter and verse, sir.
That's 16, very near the end of 16, all of 17. And the beginning of 18 of First Samuel.
Chapter.
First Samuel.
Chapter.
I just told you. First Samuel 16 through 18. First Samuel 16 through 18. The story of David and Goliath.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
All right. First Samuel chapter 18.
Look, I had the rare opportunity in 2013 to run into a Mormon. Please don't make fun of the Mormons. It's not about that. I ran into a Mormon college professor who he was quote unquote a bishop. That's the same thing as a priest in the Catholic Church. Okay. So he's in charge of teaching some 250 families every weekend about the Bible. He's also an astronomy and physics professor at that college. His last name was Hansen. He's in West Virginia if you want to look him up. I presented this to him, and he invited me to sit with his wife and kids and even enjoy a meal for 8 hours while he dug out every book that he had, including the Bible and his computer and everything else that he had. And he sat there for 8 hours trying to disprove this. The man has a master's in physics. He saw that it is plausible. And he ended the conversation with something I found equally ridiculous as most of the things that I heard. He said, yeah, but how would this help an atheist?
How do you disprove stuff that you're already viewing as a self-fulfilled prophecy, though?
It's either plausible in physics and chemistry or it is not.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Point to me the thing that in the Bible that points to physics and chemistry.
I just did.
You didn't. You know you didn't. No, you.
Okay,
pointed
if
to verses.
you look
real
at
quick.
David and Goliath as the first 5 planets and the 4 major moons over
Those are
Jupiter,
not chemistry and
what's being
physics
described is
verses.
what's
They
being
don't make any claims about physics or chemistry. Neither one of them.
Hold on. Let him explain.
I'm sorry.
where
This
he's
just seems
going.
argumentative at this point.
Yeah, just
No,
real quick. Let's just let him finish the analogy. So, so what in this First Samuel chapter do you think points to the binary star thing?
Okay, well, it's a series of events that would make it ignite or start to fuse or whatever it's going to do. I don't know. I'm not a professional. But what would lead up to that? Well, first, David would David would play the harp. That is a planetary alignment. And David would dispel an evil spirit in Saul. That is, we now know that planetary alignments encourage solar ejecta. So then a solar ejecta would come out of Saul. That is, the evil spirit was released from Saul. It was an evil spirit that God put in Saul, by the way. So it's purposeful. And we now know that solar ejecta coming toward the Earth, if it specifically comes toward the Earth, it has mass, it has its own gravitational field, trigger seismic events. Okay, so the last time we had a major solar ejecta come toward the Earth was the Carrington event, which actually made the Muppets movie, Aurora Borealis, way on down in Dallas. Can you picture that? Well,
So
it knocked out. I'm sorry.
What was the language that enumerated that claim?
Why does that matter?
What was the language?
You want me to say Aramaic? You wanted me to say Aramaic and Hebrew? I'll say Aramaic and Hebrew.
No. You should be able, if you're talking about the claims that are made in the Bible.
Yes, sir.
Of physical and chemical things, what
Yes,
was the exact language that enumerated the claims that you are making?
You mean what is it written in, or what language do I speak?
No. What I'm saying is, what is the exact language?
Are you looking for quotes here, TJ, or
that?
Okay, that's what I was going through step by step.
No, you weren't. You were saying you were. No,
I said. Hold on, I did.
Vague.
TJ, in all fairness, I did. I did start that. I was trying to do that. And here's how I was doing it. I said, play the harp means planetary alignment. Okay, that's directly. I directly quoted the text. Play the harp.
I'm asking you the actual language of the Bible.
Yeah, I was quoting it.
What is the language that actually says and claims these things?
TJ, just so we're not talking past each other, are you wanting Richard to quote the Bible passage?
Well, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't that make sense, right? Why would that not be like something that we would need to establish that these are the truth of these things? Why would we not be able to ask that?
Well,
as far as I know, the Bible's available to everybody. If you want me to read it to you, I will.
Yes, it is. And so I'm asking you, since we here don't know of anything that you're talking about, please tell us and elucidate us as to what the actual language is of what these claims are.
So if I could, since I actually have 1 Samuel 16.
So what's the actual language that says in Samuel that says
going over that.
there are physical and chemical claims that we're making about reality? What are they?
Well, if I'm understanding Richard correctly, I mean, there's not going to be a specific description.
The Bible does not read Jupiter is flammable, if that's what you're wanting.
Yeah, I mean,
nowhere in the text does it say Jupiter is flammable. It doesn't say that. Is that what you want?
Of course it doesn't.
Yeah,
is that your point?
Yeah, I think this is going to be another one of those things.
Do you think Goldilocks and the Three Bears is about talking bears as well, TJ? Is that what you think that story is about?
I'm asking for the exact language. I'm asking for the language that...
Okay, in the exact language of Goldilocks and the Three Bears talk, is that important to you? Are you saying there's no moral because the bears don't talk?
Be able to look at something specific that's claimed in the text. Why shouldn't we be able to know that?
Do you think that the Goldilocks and the Three Bears story is about talking bears?
Claim a thing that's not specifically said and
it's about morality and respecting other people's goods. That's what it's about.
Should you be able to do that?
let's
I was doing that.
let's
You are exactly. You're doing that.
yeah, let's take a step back. Take a breath. Jim has another live chat question, which may or may not.
Our show, in the 2+ years we've been doing it, our motto has always been the same: finding common ground, building bridges, having fun. We hold to that. We hold true to that. There's 4 hosts, and we all are, of course, scattered on the socio-political spectrum. That being said, if anyone accuses our show of being too civil and too amicable and too nice to the opposition, now you know why we keep TJ around. So he is the necessary evil. He's the devil's advocate or God's advocate. I don't know, but he's the one that speaks that keeps us grounded. He's the provocateur in the group. So bear with him. His heart is in the right place. And here is a question from Jason Ellis again. Ask Richard if he goes out and proselytizes. Do you? He is spot on the question of morality. Dope to hear. Still, do you go out and do you have basically, I'm paraphrasing, do you have a desire to get your point across to the masses, or are you comfortable just having this knowledge to yourself?
Well, it's greatly improved my life personally, and I want other people's lives improved. That is humanitarian effort. So, yeah, I want everyone to hear this, laugh at me heartily, realize that it's true later, and be okay.
Okay, well, I guess that's as good as we can hope for.
That's all I hope for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm trying to figure out if we want to even keep going with the discussion we were just having. So is this going to be another one of those you have to be in the right mindset to see it kind of things?
I love you, Richard.
Because
I love you too, brother. I really do.
Yeah.
Look, I really don't care what people think of me. That doesn't matter. This is not a point of pride for me. It's just that I know this is the truth. I know it's going to happen, and I want other people to know about it. So by whatever venue that requires, or whatever venue comes up, I'll take advantage of it. You could see me with Dr. Robert M. Price. No problem. I'd love to.
So if this is something, if this is truth that you want other people to realize,
well, not yet. They won't.
Not yet. So do you think?
Oh, just a side note, we've had Robert Price on our show. We probably get him again. He's very available.
Because he's into mysticism, I'd love to hit him with that side of it. That would be an interesting conversation. But anyway,
he's a character.
I'm sorry, he's a mysticist, not mysticism. Is that what you said?
He's a mythicist, not mysticist.
Well,
I'm sorry.
You never know. He's got some kind of esoteric views out there.
You're right. I was confused on that word. I apologize.
So this is okay. Is this truth that you want people to come to understand? Do you think people can come to understand it before it's too late? Or
well, that's the interesting part to me, is that we've been given a whole bunch of fairy tale form stories that aren't believable. Okay, which is why you don't believe them. They look like fairy tales. Well, that's totally acceptable. But the fairy tales flip over into reality when the things actually start to happen. So people already have all the same story all over the world that makes sense to their society. And then when they see the actions, the fairy tale will flip into reality. It's kind of a pre-set up thing. It's pretty cool.
So is there an example of something that you can point to in your studies that is going to happen reasonably soon that we can look at?
I started talking about Comet C2017 K2 Pan-STARRS back in 2013. I've already done that several times. I mean, you're not one of the people I talk to, but there's been a bunch. My baby sister, I already asked her for permission. She said I can give out her email address and people can. She's an atheist.
All right, refresh my memory. Where does that come from exactly?
It's one of the stories of the Ark of the Covenant. It's in Dagon's house. It's part of the story of, I think, Jericho. It's when the Philistines take, and you referred to it, you said, and then they return it and somebody touches the cart and they die.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to remember.
I'm not good with numbers. I'm sorry. I have to admit, I'm terrible with that. I wouldn't be able to answer TJ if I hadn't had so many people ask me what chapter and verse you're talking about.
Well, I don't remember a chapter and verse either, and I went to church for 25 years, so I don't know.
That's okay. You can just use Bible Gateway and it'll bring it up automatically. You just need the keywords. Just type in Ark of the Covenant. You'll get the answer. It's super easy now. Computers and all that.
If I hadn't said anything, I could just looked it up and be like, oh, I just knew off the top of my head because
Well, somewhere in the back of your head is probably still there.
I still remember the song we learned about the book of the Bible in the first grade because we sang it every week.
That's just sad, bro. That is just sad.
It helps now whenever I'm talking to people and I want to know.
Oh, it's the names of the books?
Yeah.
That song? I've heard of that. I don't know it.
There's probably more than one, but I had a particular one drilled into my gourd.
Hey, here's an interesting little thing. Do you know how many books are in the Bible?
Depends which version of the Bible you have.
Okay, King James.
60.
Not the new stuff. 66, that's right. Isn't it interesting that's part of the number of the beast?
It's the approximate number of the beast, right?
It's an approximate number. No, from what I understand, he's one of 6 kids. He knows the Bible inside and out. From what I understand, that's the description of the beast, the measure of a man.
$6.66, the price of roast beast.
You caught me off guard, man. I never heard that one.
Yeah.
Okay, it was Uzzah. That's one of those biblical names I wish came back. No one names their kid Uzzah anymore. Everyone's like David, John, Joseph. No one's called Uzzah.
How about Nimrod? How would you like to be named Nimrod? That sounds terrible.
That's all because of Bugs Bunny, though.
Yeah, it's exactly right. In fact, Magic Mirror on the Wall and Mirror, Mirror on the Wall presented as, this is so off topic, sorry, presented as the Mandela effect is just Bugs Bunny. That's where we get that from, not the actual movie.
I took a wrong.
We're quoting Bugs Bunny. It's so funny.
Hey, Richard.
Sir, go ahead.
Side note, kind of what a lot of the people in the chat are alluding to, and I can just blanket paraphrase all of them. What if you're wrong about your interpretations? What if it is just strictly pareidolia and just you're way off base?
I told everybody.
Are you willing to admit that? Are you willing to admit that maybe you could just be completely wrong about all this?
Oh, I don't think I'm infallible. I could be completely wrong about all this, and if so, I told everybody a weird story. So what?
Just out of curiosity, do you think there's an afterlife?
An afterlife? Well, you'd have to tell me what kind of magical spell you're talking about.
Well, I mean, very, very broadly speaking, do you think that anything happens to us after we die?
Well, he doesn't believe in anything supernatural, so we have that in common. But does any part of our being live on after our physical death, even in a natural sense?
Well, even in a very strictly physical sense, none of you ever disappears, and none of you was ever created. I mean, if you die and plants grow out of you and bugs eat you and nothing actually went anywhere.
But our consciousness, I guess. Like,
well, now that's another question. Is there the possibility of an energy that is the real you? Well, you guys have probably heard of doppelgangers. There's actually 4 of you, and all 4 of you are different. And for the 4 of you are different in different ways than just your environment, your upbringing, your weight problem, and your scars. You know?
So you're a dualist?
I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I'm only 7 years old, guys.
Do you separate consciousness from brain activity?
Oh, that's what dualist means. Okay, then yeah, sure. I don't think the consciousness is brain activity.
There's a part of us that is not necessarily just a product of our brains.
Did you know that we can't find consciousness in the brain? That's why we call it an emergent property.
Oh boy, okay.
Property because it
it is what we have to pin down.
I mean, it's just
a
not
really
there.
good definition of consciousness, I guess.
Well, I'm speaking beyond my wave cuffs, so.
Yeah, I think, and I'll speak beyond my wave cuffs. I think the idea is that consciousness is not like a physical thing that you can put in a bucket, but it's a description of mental processes that amount to a sense of self and ability to respond to stimuli and act to your environment. And
do you know the brain electrically stimulated through questioning? will have parts of it become active. The person's unaware they're active for between 3 to 5 seconds, depending on the person, before they even know that they're having a thought.
Do you know that when people were questioned in studies that the parts of the brain that indicate the self lit up when people were asked about God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have no problem with that.
Yeah. When you're asked about yourself, the things that light up in your brain point to God.
It should.
It's yourself, right?
Well, no.
Why not?
Well, I think there's a good reason we can't find the human spirit. It's not here.
What's a spirit? Define spirit, human spirit.
You know, at one point there was no such thing as radio waves. At one point there was no such thing as microwaves.
Radio waves.
You know what I'm saying? Perceptually, we didn't have a way to measure it.
Detect them. We couldn't detect them.
Right. Okay. So just because we can't measure something doesn't make it not there.
Right.
Okay. So I don't have a measuring device for a human spirit. I admit it. Okay. That doesn't mean it's not there.
Right. But to demonstrate the possibility of a thing, you have to show evidence. You can't just say this thing is.
Okay. So if I knew nothing about astronomy, and then a movie played in my head that taught me about astronomy.
But we do know things about astronomy, though.
No, you do. I didn't say you don't.
You don't know anything about astronomy?
I didn't.
Astronomy is bunk and doesn't exist?
Are you? This is a straw man show again, isn't it?
No, no. But you're the one saying
you're putting words in my mouth, making me sound stupid and ridiculous.
If it's real, then it must not be.
That's not what I said.
Hold on. Step back. I think the question about the radio waves is kind of a difference in our methodologies,
right?
You know, because before we discovered Pluto was there. We just didn't know it was there, and then we had found evidence of it. But before that, if someone suggested there was a ninth planet, I'm going to keep calling it planet because
it has moons. It has 2 satellites, so it's a planet.
I'm set in my ways. But before, if someone just said, "Hey, I think there's a ninth planet," there, then they might have been correct, but they had no reason to believe that.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. Anyone who would have believed them would do so at their own peril.
So when you ask me for evidence, I would say we have interpretation between 2 points, interpolation between 2 points, understanding things outside of those points, extrapolation. And if we have enough extrapolation, interpolation, and interpretation, then we can also have intuition. But if you have...
Would you agree that the time to believe a thing is when it's been demonstrated to be true?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. That's what we're saying.
So if someone... So what I'm saying is people can't go beyond our limits. So if you get information that is valid, true to reality, correspondence theory works for me if it works for you. If you get something that's true to reality completely outside of your experience, you can't do that. But people do.
That's a misnomer. Like you can't say this is the truth if you can't conceive of it even.
Yeah, that's right. If you can't conceive of it,
you can't demonstrate or claim that it's true.
That's right. And I couldn't even conceive of there being other moons around other planets. I couldn't even conceive of it.
So then why claim it?
Because then in the story I saw, it was describing planets and moons. So I went to look if there were moons there, and there are.
Yes.
So are you kind of working on the assumption that we may someday have a way to detect the human spirit?
I think God's already got that, and we're just going to inherit it. He's just going to give everything to us.
So magic.
It's not magic. Quit strawmanning me.
But that's what you're saying.
I said space travelers seeded a planet, and here we are. That's what I said. I said space travelers seeded a planet, and here we are. And we got a story about it. That's all I said.
Based on what? Sir, I'm just asking. Based on what? And you're shrugging your shoulders.
It's everything I've been talking about.
After that question, And that's the point that we're trying to make. If you don't know how to answer that question, like,
just tell me what you're objecting to.
I'm sorry.
You're objecting to my explanation. In other words, I've been giving the explanation. You're objecting to it.
No.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
And if the objection doesn't warrant, if the objection doesn't garner any like necessarily like explanatory thing, then like what are you giving us? Like if we're saying, hey, we doubt this thing, right, that you're saying because it seems far-fetched.
You should.
Like, and it's not like that because we're trying to say that we don't believe you because of any kind of like personal thing, right? We're just saying,
Apparently
hey,
not.
out of skepticism, we're saying, hey, we don't understand why we should believe this thing, and you
Look,
don't
man,
give us anything.
You got every reason to think spiritual texts are full of crap, and I would agree with you.
And we're not.
Okay, so
and
here
I'm
I
not
am quoting
saying
spiritual
that.
texts, and you saying I'm full of crap. That's fine.
Yeah.
I got no problem with it.
I think part of the on our end, we're used to dealing with a lot of Christian apologists and evangelists who are trying desperately to convince us to believe a thing. And
Well, I don't know why they work so hard at something that can't be real.
Yeah.
Agreed, but I think I know I'm trying very, very hard not to treat you like that, and I hope it's, even if it slips through, it's coming.
Is that like a purposeful effort you're having to exercise? Because I would apologize. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. I'm saying we're coming at it. We're used to having to have all this pushback to try and deal with people who are trying to push their stuff on us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just not gonna. I just never was interested in that. I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. I know.
I don't want to do debate. No, I don't.
Yeah,
no, thanks.
So we're kind of treating you like you're being an apologist when you're really not. You're trying to explain your position.
I'm really not. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope we're not being too crazy about it.
I think Jim's right hand got tired and he raised his left.
Yes.
All right. This is kind of a question. Oh, first off, NIFB Jesus, $10 super chat. He says, good show, good channel. Richard is a good sport. Thank you to NIFB Jesus.
Yeah, this is like a second time you're on and outnumbered, and we need to get you on with some other Christian at some point.
No, please don't do that to me.
Yeah, that was a complete abortion last time. We apologize for that.
No, I don't want to talk to another Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, you got ganged up on big time.
No, I'll talk to 6 of you guys at the same time. If you guys just do things in order, I'm fine with it.
We'll get you on. We'll get the Satanists on. We'll have the LSD guy from last time.
Well, I'll tell you what. I had a do you guys know who Ocean Keltoy is?
Oh boy,
yeah. Unfortunately, we know who that motherfucker is.
Okay,
no, I love him. TJ's not so much, but I love him.
I'm a big fan of that guy, but
no matter what you think of his belief system, the man's brilliant. Okay,
he's brilliant. Yep,
he is. Okay, so I had a conversation with him. And we're obviously, he's talking about what he would think would disagree with me. At least he thinks it would. It doesn't, but he thinks it would. And we finally came to him gaining knowledge outside of self in prayer to the God that he believes is God. Well, I got to tell you guys, I got absolutely no problem with that because I think we're just calling the same being different names. So I just have no problem with it. If you want to call God Allah, I don't care. That's fine. It's a reasonable name.
Well, I mean,
okay, so here's the question.
It is the same like Abrahamic God. I mean,
sure.
Here's the question in the live chat.
We'll call him Brahma. I'm fine with that.
It's a common theme. I'm seeing a lot of Jason Ellis is leading the vanguard in this, but some people are alluding to the razor trifecta. I've never heard it called that, but there's 3 razors, which is fitting for Atheist Edge, right?
I was just doing that, yeah.
Atheist Edge. So we got 3 the razor trifecta, and 2 of which I knew, Occam's razor and Hitchens' razor. The third one that I didn't know was Sagan's razor, but I actually, once he said it, let me go back down.
I could use to review all of those if you could quote them.
Yeah, where's goddamn Sagan's razor? Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and I don't. I think I might take
for Christianity.
I think it can be taken 2 ways. I think sometimes an absence of evidence can be evidence of absence. What do you guys think about that?
Where evidence should be expected. Where evidence should be expected, evidence of absence is absence, or absence of evidence is evidence of absence. Where evidence should be expected.
Yeah, it depends on the claim. Like if there's a claim that all of us have a giant red freckle on the back of our heads that we can't see most of the time, and we look in a mirror and we find out we don't, that's evidence that doesn't exist because we expect it to be there.
And back to Ocean. Did you have anything more to say on him? Yeah, the guy is brilliant, I believe. But yeah, there's some disputing claims about Ocean. I think he's a really great guy. He's the only polytheist we've ever had on the show, which I haven't. You know, next time we have him on the show, we got to nail him down. I'm sure he's explained it till he's blue in the face why he's a polytheist, but I've never heard his explanation for it.
Well, you know, I call you Master Sergeant because I was military. I know you were military. And that was your rank when you retired.
What was your rank? What did you get out?
I was a specialist. I was a nobody. Never even got my E5. But
all right,
anyway,
Specialist Madsen. That just sounds weird.
Yeah.
And I hate it when, you know, when I get picked up by the police, when I get pulled over and they say, "Hey, Master Sergeant Hall," you know, because I always show they ask for ID. I've got 4 IDs. I've got a concealed carry license. I got my military. I always give him my military ID first.
Yeah.
On the off chance, and it has worked, that he was a prior Marine as well, and once it backfired on me. I was headed to a atheist conference out in East Texas, and it was a female former Air Force that I know got burned by a Marine. It's some romantic relationship prior in her past because she went harder on me than she would have.
Well, I think on average you're coming out ahead. But these guys call you Jim. But if they say Jim and I say Master Sergeant, we're not talking about 2 different topics.
Oh, that's nomenclature. That's just semantics.
That's right. It's semantics.
Yeah, but when you're trying to say this heavenly body represents this, and you state it as a fact claim, that's where we are having some problems, I think.
Oh yeah, well, I think if we went over it enough and I showed and cited everything, which I'm getting all that together for people who want that sort of thing. This is kind of a new community to me.
I mean, if you did like, I haven't been on your channel recently since you did the Frank Turk video, but if you did a video series on this topic, I'd watch the videos. If you like enunciate exactly where you're going with it, but
it's not a bad idea. I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I'm already working on a series going over the Book of Revelation extremely slowly.
Oh, but that reminds me of another thing. I have 3 major pet peeves in my life, and 2 of them apply to this conversation, and Richard has not violated any of them, which is rare. The first one that doesn't apply is people driving slow in the far left lane on a highway. It's for passing only. God damn it. The second 2.
I can already tell you what the other one is. Not yielding to ramp. Not yielding to ramp.
No. The other 2 apply to this conversation. The other one is, if I ask Richard a question right now, and it's a new question, it's not a continuation of a previous thought, and he starts off, turn on CNN or Fox or MSNBC and see how many times this happens. I ask you a question, it's not a continuation of a previous question, and you start off your sentence with the word "so." That is beyond disrespectful. It's like you're not even listening to my question and you're just continuing on. That fucking pisses me off. I'm sorry. I forget what the third one is. I'm so pissed now. But yeah.
Do I do that so a lot? I feel like I do that a lot.
I'd catch you on it if you did. But
Jim would kick me off the channel if I did it too much. Oh God, I gotta listen to this guy while editing, and he keeps saying "so" 500 times.
The other one is the book that Richard has been on point with, which most of our guests are not, but the Book of Revelation, and it's singular. You would be surprised how many street preachers I've recorded myself arguing with, and I catch them on. I was like, you don't even know your own Bible. What do you mean? Because you're calling the last book in the New Testament. You're calling it incorrectly. You're naming it incorrectly.
Well, since
it's not the Book of Revelations.
The series that I'm doing is called Suffer Revelations, but I didn't name it. The other guy did.
It's the Book of Revelation of who?
Jesus Christ.
No. It's St. John the Divine.
St. John the Divine. Yes.
That was put in later.
which isn't John from, it's not, okay, the St. John the Divine from Revelation, John, and John 1 and 2, and John of Patmos. Those are all different Johns, and they were not written. None of the books of the Bible were written by a John. Just like Richard said, they were put in there later.
St. John the Divine really sounds like a drag queen name or something.
That's all right.
That is terrible, isn't it?
Oh man. Okay. So Richard, we've been kind of grilling you for an hour and a half.
I hope you're enjoying it. I am.
Yeah, we enjoy these discussions. That's what we have people on. Is there anything you would like to grill us on? Like,
yes.
What they think atheists should answer.
How is your view of the Bible different from Christians' view of the Bible?
It's a lot of it didn't happen, and it's not magic.
No, but tell me what part of the text you think is different from what they say it means.
How much time you got, buddy?
Yeah, well,
I'd like to hear that because I doubt you have very, very, very little or anything.
Probably.
For instance,
okay, well,
like,
let me put it this way.
Yeah.
So there's not all Christians, but there's a certain breed of Christian that thinks that Bible verses themselves have some sort of magic power.
Mhm.
Like if you pray a certain verse, or you put a certain verse on your home, or that if you just like if you approach a heathen in the streets and say this one magic verse, or the top 10 verses that atheists won't want you to say to them, the BuzzFeed article, but these verses somehow have magical power in and of themselves to have actual effects on things, and it should be pretty obvious that we don't agree on that.
I think that's doctrinal, isn't it? That's a specific church or specific churches.
Yeah, like I said, it's not all Christians. I'm not sure what specific denominations may hold to that, but I know that they're definitely out there. Probably not a majority of people, but they're out there.
What I mean more is, do you think the word slaughter means to kill somebody? That's what I mean. Because Christians think so.
In English, yes.
But specifically in the Bible, though.
I can't imagine a context where it wouldn't.
Or stone means to throw a rock.
If it's used as a verb, yes.
Could it be active, a verb, and still not include violence? Does it have to mean throw a rock? Does it have to mean that?
I can't. I can't imagine where it would be used in any other context in the Bible.
Right. Okay. So if I said there was 2 uncut stones with the word of God written in them, could I have an uncut stone with words written in it? Is that possible?
Words written in it, like inside
So
of it?
INN, yes, sir.
What about the passages in the Bible that say stone them literally to death?
That's what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah, like I said, if it's a verb, I can't think of a place in the Bible where it's used outside of stoning someone to death. But
right,
you're talking about a stone noun with words engraved in it, which would be different.
Stone, which is a noun, with the word of God written in. Every time someone quote unquote builds an altar, they have to build it out of 2 uncut stones with the word of God written in them. That's physically implausible. That's not possible. That's against physics.
I guess maybe if talking engraving, that's the only thing I can think of.
So you can cut it. You can engrave something without cutting the stone. Then I'd like to see that.
That is reaching, Richard. I mean, it's pretty apparent. Even if we go back to the Hebrew, which I don't know why I happen to know the actual Hebrew word for stone, it's rakia. Because the firmament, the dome over the earth, is supposed to be made out of stone or a thin sheet of metal. So rakia is the Hebrew word for stone. And when you stone someone in Leviticus, you're pounding them with rocks.
Oh, I know that it's normally seen that way, but that's what I'm actually pointing out is
does not refer to throwing rocks at someone until they are dead. Give us your justification for that.
I was.
He's talking about verb and he's talking noun. So we're talking about 2 different things. But as far as the uncut stone thing, I mean, I would need to look at the actual verse for it. Like I get the point you're trying to make, but I'm not sure if that's an actual.
What I'm saying is the uncut stone can't be actually a rock in that verse. Okay, you can't cut something and not cut it. That's not.
What I'm
you
asking
can't
for
do
is
that.
the causal link. I'm asking for
Right.
the causal
Right.
link.
Right.
I think
How
you
are-
might be
how
reading
are
too much
married?
into it.
How
Or-
are you marrying
not
this
enough.
concept of stoning not meaning throwing rocks at someone until they are dead,
Mm-hmm.
and the meaning that you are ascribing to this particular thing?
Well,
How are
you use
marrying
language.
those concepts?
You use language the same way we all do. In fact, much of our language comes from
But
the
I'm
ancient
asking, yeah, and I'm
Near
asking
East.
you to show that.
And don't get us wrong. I mean, there's a lot
It's called
of
figurative
points
language.
of
You know what that means.
there's a lot of points in the Bible that we do agree wholeheartedly with Christians on. For instance, me personally, it's arguable, maybe even amongst the hosts here, but I am certain that Paul existed. He was a man. He was a converted Jew. He 6 of the 13 epistles that he wrote are genuine. He actually put pen to paper on those.
That doesn't make Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection real, but it makes him real. I get that.
He met Jesus's. And Richard
Brother.
Carey and I have had debates over lots of whiskey on this one, but yeah, Galatians does speak of Paul in a genuine writing, speaking face to face with Jesus's brother. That's
Mhm.
why I cannot be a mythicist. Just that Galatians 4, I believe it is. That right there is enough for me that Jesus was a man. Now, did he walk on water? Did he turn water into wine at a wedding? Did he, destroy a fig tree with mine bullets? No.
So Richard, the original thrust of your question, you were making some point about how much we agree with Christians on the Bible, right?
Yeah, just on the words and how the words are to be interpreted, not the truth of it. I don't expect, of course, any atheist or agnostic to believe the Bible is true.
Mhm.
That's ridiculous. But how much do you disagree on what the words mean? It seems to me that everyone seems to agree, secular and religious alike, as to what those words mean. But then if they take that we use language figuratively and they took it as figurative language, it's not necessarily talking. I mean, it's plausible that it's not talking about any violence at all.
Yeah, I mean, you'll certainly find places where we will disagree with Christians about language, and where Christians will disagree with other Christians about language.
Certainly true.
Maybe the stone example isn't the best example of it, but
I think it's a fine example. We just never got to flush it out.
Well, I'm not sure I want to go down that route, just because I think it'll come down to definitions of cutting and engraving and writing in, and it's such a minute thing, where when you have all the more salient examples, like what does the word Alma mean in Isaiah, and how does that relate to the virgin birth narratives in the Gospels, where you have a word in Hebrew that is translated in a way in Greek that is translated another way into English.
Sure.
And to the Christian, that becomes a central part of their doctrine.
I think it just means young woman.
Yeah, to my understanding, that's what
I don't think it means never had sex her whole life. I don't think it means that.
Yeah, and Catholics will disagree with other Christians on never had sex their whole life, and many people
when I was in the army in Honduras in '88, some boy offered me his mother for the night. Said his mother was a virgin.
Well, that sounds like a once in a lifetime offer. You could have started a whole religion off of that.
But that's how they refer to a woman who hasn't had intercourse for a while. That's how they say that.
Oh, that's a good system. You get like
it returns. It's not a one-time deal.
Oh, that.
For the record, I didn't take him up on it, even though I was a heathen.
Okay. Well, I need to scrutinize some Tinder profiles more closely then.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Don't know how someone's using that word. That was terrible, Chris.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, we're not exactly known for making our highbrow sense of humor on it. I'm thinking of certain yet to be released episodes that we filmed last time. Oh man.
No, but my point in saying all that is that I think there's a good argument to be made that secular and religious alike see the text the same way, which is not at all saying that they either both agree or both don't agree as to the meaning of the text, but they definitely see the text in the same way as the context of it. Like everyone believes, secular and scholar alike, that God committed genocide in the Old Testament. Everybody believes that.
Well, I mean, they believe that's what the story is indicating.
Right.
We believe that's an actual historical.
I worded it poorly. You're right. That was much better. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but they do believe that's what the story is about.
Right.
But you know, when I first started looking into these things, when I first said, well, you know, I better start taking this more seriously and not just blow it off because I didn't want to believe it. When I first started to say that, I went and looked at all the typical arguments presented by people arguing against the validity of Christianity and other things. And I saw what they're saying, and I still see them today. But actually, all of those things can be explained. There is actually no. Oh, I never identified what I was talking about.
So you can
within the
things.
Within the text, there is actually nothing that disagrees with itself, from between any religion or between any singular religion. There's actually nothing that disagrees. That's all point of view problems.
Do you think God is responsible for evil?
I think God is responsible for evil.
Do you think God is responsible for evil?
Okay, the word evil is used two ways in spirituality.
That is only a yes or no question.
Let him explain.
Okay, I decline answering.
Of course you do. Because answering it would be like inconvenient.
So you're going to straw man me again. I see.
No,
let him define his definition of evil. Let him answer.
It would be inconvenient to your narrative.
Well, he's trying.
No, let's pin down the definition of what he considers evil, and then let's.
What I was going to do right off the bat, I was going to give clarity.
Regardless of what you think is evil, God says expressly that He is responsible for evil.
Okay, so because I don't want to play the game exactly the way you want me to, you're going to straw man me.
I'm not playing the game. I'm pointing to the thing that is expressly said in the Bible.
Well, he's not going by the Bible as we would go with the Bible, which is why I'm kind of interested to see where he goes with this.
TJ, in normal Christianity, your argument is valid, and I agree with you. Is that good? Okay. Now. The word evil is actually used two different ways.
You would have to agree that is a contradiction.
So the word evil...
That is a contradiction.
Let him explain.
So the word evil is used two different ways. One, it's used as to explain our perception, like we would call it evil. And then there's things that are referred to as actual evil. So it's actually used two ways. Okay. So...
It's either evil or it isn't.
Okay, right? Breathing water is evil. Okay?
How
because I'm not a water breather.
But that's not God's interpretation of what is evil.
No, that's the way he's using it. Does he create evil? No, he doesn't create it.
He says he creates evil.
He allows for. I said sometimes it's by our perception.
He specifically says he creates it.
What's in my view, I know you don't agree with my...
He doesn't do what he's saying he does. How are you justifying that he doesn't do what he says he does? How are you justifying that?
You're a Christian.
I'm not a Christian.
You are a Christian. You can't even help it. You are so locked in Christian dogma. It's prevalent.
I don't understand what you're even saying, dude.
You even refer to the text like you're a Christian. To me, you sound like a Christian. I'm
asking you to make sense.
You sound like a pissed off Christian, but you sound like a Christian.
I'm asking you to make sense.
It does make sense.
So stepping back, the idea, breathing water is evil. That's an interesting way of putting it, because I think we put evil. Usually, evil, as I understand it, is a moral question, not a question of, okay, what
It gets more nuanced.
What will hurt me if I do this? What, like,
Well,
by,
I mean,
by,
if
by that standard, breathing the wrong air is evil. If that's just broadly defined as what is bad for us.
Sure.
Am I understanding kind of where you're going with it?
of course it gets more nuanced than that. I mean, you can spend your whole life taking advantage of sexual partners, but eventually you're going to feel like crap about yourself. You know, it's just what's naturally good for us, what's naturally bad for us. Of course, some of it's emotional, some of it's physical. What's that? Okay, advantageous and not advantageous.
Advantageous and not advantageous.
Okay, causes prosperity, causes a lack of prosperity. Stuff like that.
So can we call these things advantageous and not disadvantageous or bad for us, whatever, rather than
Sure.
calling them good or evil? Just
Sure, it works just as well. Why not?
yeah. I just worry that if we start
Okay,
talking
now he's
about
got both hands above his head, and they're getting tired.
Jim is, yes, before Jim's arms fall off.
Yes,
Jim,
that'd be good.
What was I gonna say? See, I had my hand up too long.
You know, that's why crucifixion kills you. Drown in your own fluids.
It's suffocation. I thought it was
Right.
asphyxiation because
Yeah, you drown in your own fluids. Your lungs can't empty fluids if your arms are above your head for a continuous amount of time. Yeah.
Oh shoot. Okay.
It's a
Now I'm
suggestion,
really
right.
thrown off. Let's see. Oh, we can't get through a podcast, it seems, without me throwing out my weird, unique view of morality. And I'll just throw it out there, and you don't have to respond to it. But my I know Chris is not going to do it. We got 14 minutes left, and Chris is not going to plug his own shit, so I'm going to do it for him. Sleepinginsundays.com. He's got awesome blog, well-researched, heavily researched shit. Sleepinginsundays.com. Go, and the latest one you're going to find on there is a review of Subjective Morality, which I agree with. I mean, everything in it, I was just cheering when I was reading it. It's so well written. But my view of subjective morality does not include the following 6 terms: right, wrong, good, evil, should, and ought. So as long as we can avoid those 6 words, now I'm going to channel Sam Harris real quick, but morality, in my view, is that which simultaneously increases well-being while at the same time decreases suffering. Just like Richard was saying about overall well-being. So breathing in water of yourself, I think he might kind of have a point there. I wouldn't call it evil. I would call it maybe immoral, because you are increasing suffering. You're not doing anything to increase your well-being. So it might that he might have a point, and I never thought about it until now. But suicide in itself might be an immoral act.
do you think that morality has or I think that freedom has a place in morality, like freedom to choose your own course?
Is this for Jim or me?
For Jim, or actually, if you want to chime in, that'll work too.
No,
But
let Jim go.
Yes,
Cool.
I was more directly responding to him. But do you think that like denying someone their freedom is immoral, and allowing them freedom is moral?
I think it might depend on the liberties that you're extending or depriving, because certain freedoms, like, don't, you must wear a seatbelt. You're only that's a John Stuart Mill, one of those for your own good arguments, like personal consumption of marijuana or seatbelt laws or helmet laws with motorcycles. These are laws that are designed to protect you from yourself. And I would consider those maybe immoral, because what if your well-being is enhanced by you go ahead and snuffing out? I'm not a nihilist, but there might be some people out there that would choose to be better. They would say, I'm better off just go ahead and punching out. And I'm just going to, and I want to ride my Harley Davidson without a helmet. I want to drive my car I want to smoke marijuana, whatever. Those are for your own. I'm way off.
Yeah, I like how we get into this in the last 10 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
Well, Sam Harris talking to Jordan Peterson said, I can imagine a universe where everyone is a sadist. Well, do the logical conclusions. Is the best thing for you the best thing for you if you're a sadist?
Oh no, you mean what's the not
Masochist,
sadist,
sadist, etc. Yeah, all those things.
sadist
Yeah.
is when you want to inflict pain on others, but so it'd be masochist.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so then social justice for the saddest. What does that mean?
Good point. Great point. So Chris, so I know you're hosting this, but we have 10 minutes left, so do it with it what you will.
Do with it. So much pressure. Well, TJ, I saw you had your hand up. Do you have anything to add to the last bit?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the thing though that Harris kind of points to though when he's talking about those things that people don't necessarily glom on is that he says also like, hey, so if I talk about being healthy, one person's or some people's estimation of health might be throwing up every minute of every day, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not the same thing that the rest of us necessarily look at as healthy, mm-hmm. right? So there are things that we generally and necessarily as a society look at and say, look, this is what this is. This is how this is good for us, and this is how this is bad for us. So it's necessarily subjective in the sense that, like, look, so there are these things that we look at and we say, hey, there are these things that are good for society or good for individuals or good for people on average as a whole. And there are these things that we would generally recognize that aren't or are unhealthy, right? Would you agree with that? I mean, you can't look at something and necessarily say, oh, hey, this is always what's moral or always what's immoral. Things are subjective and ethics are situational. I mean, you can't necessarily say, hey, this is immoral or this is wrong or this is good or this is moral. Like you have to take into account what the things that people hold as values. So Jim said, I don't use those 6 words, right? Should, could, should, ought, whatever. Like, but you can use those if you can say, hey, if we want to get to a specific goal vis-a-vis X thing in reality, like if there's this like certain goal we want to get to as a society, yes, we can say this is what you should or ought to do. I mean,
to get to that goal, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a goal in mind, you can definitely use the words should and ought.
Right.
Yeah, one idea I've heard recently that I probably have to chew on a little bit more, and of course it came out after I wrote my big blog post about morality, is that the end goal of morality can be subjective, but once you have that goal in mind, how you get there is objective.
Yeah.
Like well-being as a goal may be somewhat arbitrary, but there are some things that are definitely in support someone's well-being, and there are some things that definitely go against that. It's just whether you decide that's your thing, or whether we agree that's a thing. That's the whole sticky part of it. But
yeah,
that pretty makes it plug time, doesn't it?
Yeah, we are getting about to that point. So, Richard, thank you so much for getting on here with us. We definitely enjoyed
having you
on again.
Seriously.
So you have a YouTube channel. Jim has it linked down
playlist.
in
it's
the
tiny
description. Yeah. So what will people find when they go to your channel? What are your videos?
Oh, Chris, I don't think I have his channel. You know what, Richard? If you could email me in all the plugs, and I'll put them in the description later.
Pretty
of this
sure
video.
I gave it to Chris.
Yeah.
Just forward that on to me, and I'll put it in the description.
Okay. Love to.
Yeah. So once we get the link in there, what will people find? What do you do videos about?
Well, they're going to find me mostly appearing on other people's channels because I don't have one.
Okay.
And they're going to find me saying very, very objectionable things about God and the Bible being real and containing no magic. Pretty much what I do here.
Okay. Let's see. Jim already plugged me because apparently I'm humble now all of a sudden. TJ, do you have anything else that you are plugging right now?
Well, I just want to plug, this channel, Atheist Edge. We really like Richard, and he's a good guy. And We really thank him for coming on and hanging out with us and talking to us, because it's always important to have these conversations, whether or not, you know, a lot of people think, oh, hey, this is very polarizing and we shouldn't talk about this. No, I think, you know, we kind of demonstrate on this channel that no, that's not the case. We obviously should be talking about these things. And we really appreciate the people that disagree with us, that come onto the show and talk about these things with us. I appreciate you, Chris, for hosting this tonight, and Jim for making this possible with the channel. So with that being said, you know, thank you guys for just being you and hanging out with us and talking to us. So appreciate it.
And,
you know, you guys are all my brothers, and I love you very much. And I really do congratulate anyone who got away from an expression they couldn't agree with, either morality or in logic. I really congratulate you. And if you never joined into it, I congratulate you. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Jim, last things.
I have one saved round regarding that morality issue. TJ brought
Yes.
up a really salient point there at the end. And those 6 words that I don't use when I'm talking about morality can be used if you use an if-then conversation like he was talking about. If you want a society X, then you should do this. So that there you could use should, would, ought, you know, evil, good, bad, all those. I mean, there are certain times to use those if you want to achieve a desired outcome. But that's not my that's above what I'm talking about with subjective morality. Second thing, we just put out today part 2 of a 3-part series with Satanists that we had in studio recently. It's really good. Go and check that out in our video library. Part 3 will be out probably around Thursday-ish, end of next week sometime. And the last thing, Richard, I'm so glad that we could have you back on. I'm glad Chris set this up, because I really felt this whole time I've been feeling just really terrible about the way you were treated last time. The panel was too big. You were ganged up on. They were coming at you with, you know, fire and brimstone. I mean, yeah, I'm so glad we could do this again in a more civil and congenial way, and that's all I've got.
This is a nice, slower pace. I want you guys to know I am forever indebted to you, and I mean that. And maybe someday you'll understand what I mean by that. I know you can't see that right now, but thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
So yeah, thanks for everyone for watching and for submitting your questions. We appreciate you guys all participating, and hopefully, if this is your first time watching us, hopefully you like, subscribe. We just did about 10 hours of filming last weekend, so we got a bunch of cool videos coming out. We got more Satanist stuff. We have religious trivia. If you want to know why we were laughing about drugs leading you to God, check out our last live chat that should be in the archive now. And yeah, hope you will join us again. And with that, we'll call it a night. Thanks, everyone, and hope to see you again here real soon.